Hey everybody, I'm here today to show you how to steer a car correctly. In this video, I'll be going over a very simple method for steering a car properly, safely, and correctly. Now let's get right to it. I just opened that sunroof to let some light into the car to brighten up the video a bit. Now, there are mainly two methods that I would recommend using to steer a car, and it will differ depending on how you like the feel of the car and also where you live, because some places prefer different methods for certain driving tests. Now, the first method is hand-over-hand steering, which is when you have two hands on the wheel, use one hand to move the wheel and the other hand goes over, then the hand goes under, over, just like that, okay? Over, under, over, under. Very simple. And I've done many different videos on hand-over-hand steering. And the other method that I would recommend is push-pull steering. So if you have two hands on the wheel, you want to use one hand to push the wheel while you release the other hand. So I'm pushing the wheel like that. Then you want to pull the wheel. Push, pull, push. Okay? Very simple. Push, pull, push. You're basically sliding your hands along the wheel. That's the easiest way to put it. Okay? And only one hand is doing the movement of the wheel. The other hand is releasing. So while one hand is moving the wheel, the other hand is released. Okay? Just like that. Very simple. Now those are the two methods that I would recommend. But there are other methods for steering. So let's get right to steering in driving situations, okay? I would recommend holding two hands on the wheel at all times, as often as you can. You know, sometimes you have to do other things, or if you're shifting gears, I understand. But for the most part, if you want to steer a car correctly, you need two hands to use these methods. Let's put the car in reverse. We're going to go ahead and drive through some of the side streets over here, and I'll be explaining the various ways to steer a car correctly in different situations, okay? Now, when you're reversing out of a parking spot, if you want to steer a car correctly, you don't want to just crank the wheel all the way, okay? It's as simple as that. You want to move the wheel a little bit as you're backing up, because you don't want to swipe any cars, scratch any cars beside you. Move the wheel a bit more, and then as soon as your front end passes the car, clears the car that you're parked beside, then you can crank the wheel, and you saw I used hand steering there. Crank the wheel until it locks. So that's one way to steer the car correctly when reversing out of a parking spot. Now that I'm putting the car in drive, hand over hand, until it locks the other way. So when you want to make sharp turns, that's the first thing I want to talk about. When you want to make sharp turns, you're going to use either type of steering, hand over hand or push pull, it doesn't matter, to steer until it locks. Now I'm going to make a little right turn here. I'll use push pull, as you can see. Very easy method. And then I'm going to release the wheel when I'm done the turn. You want to keep practicing until you can steer the car. Okay, steer the car throughout the turn and then release the wheel and when you're done the turn. And that just happens with practice. You got to keep practicing. Now, the other thing that I want to go over now that I'm going into a side street is swerving, okay? If you have to swerve for whatever reason, I'm just going to let this car go first. I think they're going to go. Yeah. If you have to swerve for whatever reason, you have to know how to steer and swerve, okay? It's very important, because if you have to avoid something or swerve, then you need to know how to do it. So as you can see, I'm turning. Let's say I'm driving right here and I have to swerve, just like that, okay? You want to be able to swerve, and depending on how much you need to swerve, you might have to turn the wheel for longer. So that was a quick swerve. If I wanted to swerve longer, let's say I wanted to avoid this, I'd go like that. Very simple, okay? As you can see, I swerve to the left, swerve back to the right. Now, the reason that I recommend doing that is because you want to try and maintain being in that lane or in that position as much as you can. So if you have to swerve, ideally you want to swerve back to where you were. If you can't, it's totally understandable, because safety is your number one concern. But you want to try to swerve back if possible. The next thing that I want to talk about with regards to steering correctly is turning. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to approach this stop sign and I'll show you a few more turns, okay? So let's go ahead and just take some regular right and left hand turns. Nothing fancy, just regular right and left hand turns. Let's put my left signal on. I'm gonna come to a complete stop over here at the stop sign, check my mirrors, check my blind spot. Now watch how I turn, okay? I know how much I have to turn the steering wheel. It's about this much to make the turn, 75% of a turn, and then I release it. That's the key. You gotta keep practicing until you can get that, okay? I'll make another left hand turn over here. You wanna know how much to turn the steering wheel to make that turn properly, and then you can release the wheel once you've made the turn. Let's make another left-hand turn over here. Just gonna wait for this car to go around me. As you can see over here, let's see, they're just taking the turn a little bit slowly. Now we're gonna make this turn. I know that I need to turn the wheel that much, and then I release it, okay? Now it's a very, very simple method, okay? So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna turn onto a side street that has sort of a little circular junction over here. So let's make this turn right here. I know I have to turn the wheel this much, and then release. That's how to steer a car properly throughout a turn. I've shown you a few examples. Now I'm going to show you how to steer a car more aggressively through a sharper turn. Now this is even true if you have to lock the wheel. So I'll show you right now. We're going to steer more aggressively throughout this turn, and I'll get the wheel into a lock position. Now the lock position is when you've turned the wheel all the way and it will not turn any further, okay? So check this out. I'm turning in this straight, wheel is locked. Check that out. The wheel is locked. And then you can release it, and look at that, it turned back perfectly. And that's what practice will get you. Now the other thing that I want to talk about with regards to steering a car correctly is staying centered where you are. So obviously if you're driving, you don't want to be, maneuvering from one part of the lane or the road to the other. You want to be able to stay roughly centered wherever you are. So I would recommend that you use a few of these tips to stay centered. Okay, let's just close this because there's some pedestrians that they don't want them to hear this whole video. I'm kind of, I don't know. I'm not at the level where I'm not embarrassed yet. I still try and, keep my videos to only me watching as opposed to a whole audience of people that can hear me. Okay, back to business. When you want to stay centered and steer centered, number one, you have to have a balanced approach on the steering wheel. So you have to have both hands on the steering wheel equidistant from the top center. So like I said, if you can imagine the steering wheel as a clock, okay, the top center is 12 o'clock. You should be at, I would recommend either 10 and 2 o'clock or 9 and 3 o'clock, or even lower if you want 4 and 7 o'clock, but you want them to be equally from the top center of that wheel, okay? Also, you want to look further ahead. So let's say I was driving down this side street and I wanted to maintain myself being in the center of this imaginary lane, because there's no lanes on this street. There's two ways of traffic, but there's no lanes. So I'm equidistant on the steering wheel, balanced, and I'm looking far ahead. If I look in front of me, if I look at the road here, like there's a speed bump, if I'm looking at the speed bump, I'm swerving to the right now. And I've had my license for many years and I've done many driving videos, but if you look right down in front of you, if I look at the pylon over there, I'm actually moving to the right. You can see that if I look to the left over here, if I'm looking at the car to the left, I'm moving to the left. The wheel was actually moving to the left just by looking to the left. So you need to maintain your hand positioning equidistant from the top center of the steering wheel, and you need to actually look far ahead. So you want to look far ahead. It's better also with regards to predicting what's going to happen. So that's basically it. In this video, I have shown you how to steer a car correctly. There are many different things you can do to steer a car properly, but I've shown you a few different strategies and tactics that you can use to steer a car correctly. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Let me know what you think down below as a comment, and of course be sure to subscribe for more great car and driving videos just like this one. And that's all I have for you today. Thanks for watching.